Okay, so we're ready to begin? Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right, here we go. The People's Zoom Readers Theater welcomes you to a performance of Better to Light a Single Candle Than to Curse the Darkness. We're a diverse group that's deeply concerned about prejudice and injustice, and we believe that through drama, we can effectively combat evils such as racism, anti-Semitism, and homophobia. Our hope is that you will join us in our effort to make a positive difference in our communities, our countries, and beyond.
I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. I'd like to hold it in my arms and keep it company. I'd like to see the world for once while standing hand in hand and hear them echo through the hills for peace throughout the land.
We are voices of diversity, characters from plays and movies, writers and activists that tell stories of intolerance and discrimination.
Varying our culture, race, religion, gender, age, and sexual orientation, much more. Unfortunately, what we have in common are indelible experiences of pain, humiliation, disbelief, and despair. But we still have hope.
From the ignorant, unfeeling, and often unspeakable behavior that we've witnessed and endured, we've often wondered if the world has gone mad, if too many human beings have totally forgotten their humanity. Perhaps some terrible virus strips the minds of these evildoers' power of reason and erodes their hearts of love and compassion, leaving behind animals masquerading as human beings. If not some terrible disease of the mind, what accounts for people destroying other human beings without conscience?
Some people aren't as obvious in their hatred or disrespect for others. We have seen men and women simply turn their backs on people of all ages and gender who are suffering from emotional, physical, or economic discrimination. They avert their eyes and they close their ears to bullying, harassment, or worse. They might raise their eyebrows or even think of themselves as good people, but they do nothing when they witness, see, or hear comments, jokes, tweets, and blogs that are racially insulting, anti-Semitic, anti-Islamic, anti-Asian, anti-Hispanic, anti-gay, anti-female, or anti-disabled.
We know that no country, no group of people is completely free of sin when it comes to prejudice. It's been around since the beginning of time. Still, we have hope. We have today, and we have you.
Today, we are focusing on three types of prejudice: racism, anti-Semitism, and homophobia. We will share excerpts from some of our histories, plays, movies, speeches, and songs, with the hope that through our experiences we can open more eyes to the pervasiveness of prejudice and the great harm it can do the soul of its victim and the people around them. Change can only come when genuinely decent people refuse to contribute to the problem by their silence. Change will come when being decent and moral means finding the courage to apologize for insensitivity and speak up and speak out in ways that discourage coldness, cruelty, and discrimination.
Change will come when we choose government leaders who are genuinely committed to fighting for economic, social, sexual, racial, and religious equality. Change will definitely come when people like you commit to becoming a builder of brotherhood and sisterhood, a constructive member of the human race.
Together we can light candles of hope and open minds to the importance of purging our community of prejudice.
Where does prejudice come from? I'm Oscar Hammerstein, and my partner Richard Rogers and I tried to answer this question in a song in our Broadway musical South Pacific. The setting of our play is 1944 on an island in the South Pacific. The United States is at war, and as you can imagine, people of different races are very suspicious of each other. In our play, Lieutenant Joe Cable, a handsome US lieutenant from Philadelphia, is waiting for his dangerous assignment. While waiting, he meets and falls in love with a beautiful Tonkinese woman, a native of the island. When there is talk about their future together, he thinks about the reaction of his family back home. And Lieutenant Joe Cable does something that is very hard to do. He begins to question, even challenge, the wisdom and the correctness of his upbringing. He questions the things he learned as a child, especially with regard to his association with other people who are different. In the song, You've Got to Be Carefully Taught, Joe desperately tries to remind himself why he should reject this lovely young Tonkinese woman who only wants to make him happy.
You've got to be taught to hate and fear. You've got to be taught from year to year. It's got to be drummed in your dear little ear. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught to be afraid of people whose eyes are oddly made and people whose skin is a different shade. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You've got to be carefully taught.
Clearly, the explorers who first came to America learned the lessons of hate very well. Ignorance and fear of people who are different were certainly among the causes of their disrespect and hatred of my people. With little shame, these explorers decided that we, the indigenous people, weren't worthy of the lands we inhabited. They took our lands and forcibly relocated us to reservations, parcels of land to which we had no historical connection. Their special gifts were disease and addiction.
Careful of your teeth.
I am a Native American, and my history, the history of Native Americans, is literally a trail of tears, even before America became a country.
Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace.
You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will be as one.
Ironically, while the government of United States was trying to get rid of Native Americans, they were populating the country with another group of people for which they had no respect: my people. I am Langston Hughes, African American poet, novelist, activist, playwright, and columnist. And I know my history. In the early 1600s, my African ancestors were stolen from their countries and brought to America as slaves. Over time, the number grew to 11 to 15 million men, women, and children. It's unthinkable, isn't it, that so-called decent, honorable members of the community who thought of themselves as moral, God-fearing, moral citizens of a democratic society could treat fellow human beings worse than animals as their personal property, and yet they did. Even after the Civil War was fought and we African Americans were freed in 1865, became citizens in 1868, and granted the right to vote in 1870, we were still treated shamelessly, particularly in the South. This message is vividly conveyed in The Great Debaters, a 2007 movie that is based on a true story about a debating team and their coach at Wiley College, located in Texas.
I'm Melvin Tolson, a professor and debating team coach at Wiley College. It's 1935, and I want to empower my Black students by helping them develop effective powers of reasoning and persuasive debating skills. With my guidance and our team's considerable talent, Wiley College became so successful competing with the top African American colleges that our team was invited to compete with white students, a groundbreaking achievement. This doesn't sound so revolutionary today, but in 1935 it was major because at that time there were laws, Jim Crow segregation laws, that made it illegal for blacks and whites to go to school together. So our first debate had to be held outside, off campus, due to these laws of segregation. And Samantha Book, our only female on the team, made a great case against segregation. Let's hear what she argued.
As long as schools are segregated, Negroes will receive an education that is both separate and unequal. By Oklahoma's own reckoning, the state is currently spending 5 times more for the education of a white child than it is spending educating a colored child. That means better textbooks for the white child than for the colored child. Oh, I say that's a shame. But my opponent says today is not the day for whites and coloreds to go to the same college, to share the same campus, to walk in the same classroom. Well, would you kindly tell me when that day is going to come? Is it going to come tomorrow? Is it going to come next week? In 100 years? Never? No, the time for justice, the time for freedom, and the time for equality is always right now.
African Americans have had to fight to get a decent education, and in many places, as it has become well known today, the fight goes on. It was quite fortunate that Wiley College existed, but Wiley was an oasis in the middle of a war zone for African Americans. Educated or not, African Americans were forced to do things that no white person had to endure.
We couldn't eat, sleep, drink, or learn with white people. We sat in the back of the bus, went in the servant's door, and had to find our own places to eat and bathrooms to relieve ourselves.
We were often accused and convicted of crimes we never committed. So when our college was given the unique opportunity to debate the current national debate champion, we were thrilled. And when we won, it was vindication, proof that with quality education, we Black students were just as capable of great things as our white peers. I'm James Farmer Jr. I was one of the debaters in that momentous debate. The resolution was civil disobedience is a moral weapon in the fight for justice. I'm happy to share my final argument with you. In Texas, they lynched Negroes. My teammates and I saw a man strung up by his neck and set on fire. We drove through a lynch mob with our faces pressed against the floorboard. I looked at my teammates. I saw the fear in their eyes, and worse, the shame. What was this Negro's crime that he should be hung without trial in a dark forest filled with fog? Was he a thief? Was he a killer? Or just a Negro? Was he a sharecropper, a preacher? Were his children waiting up for him? And who were we to just lie there and do nothing? No matter what he did, the mob was the criminal. But the law did nothing, just left us wondering why. My opponent says nothing that erodes the law, the rule of law, can be moral. But there is no rule of law in the Jim Crow South, not when Negroes are denied housing, turned away from schools, hospitals, and not when we are lynched. St. Augustine said, an unjust law is no law at all, which means I have a right, even a duty, to resist with violence or civil disobedience. You should pray I choose the latter.
Well, I did choose the latter. On December 1st, 1955, in Montgomery, Alabama, I, Rosa Parks, refused to give up my seat on the bus to a white man. I used civil disobedience to try to change the law of racial segregation. I was arrested, and for almost a year, our African American brothers and sisters boycotted the buses. Now, on November 23rd, 1956, the United States Supreme Court declared segregated busing unconstitutional. And Dr. Martin Luther King, who mobilized many protests, also agreed with St. Augustine that an unjust law is no law at all. He found different ways to use civil disobedience to help African Americans improve our situations in America. But of course, the greatest memory I have of Dr. King was his nonviolent march on Washington on August 28, 1963. I believe on that day, he earned the title Father of the Civil Rights Movement. Despite the intense heat, we were all invigorated by the words, his vision of a better future. Yes, Martin's I Have a Dream speech is forever recorded in my memory.
I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Dreams? I know about dreams. I know the frustration that results from unfulfilled dreams, the feeling of hopelessness. It can destroy you. My poem, Dreams Deferred, speaks of such frustration. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat? Or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load? Or does it explode?
That poem is about me. I'm Walter Younger, the sun in A Raisin in the Sun. Lorraine Hansberry's play about an African American family. I'm very angry and frustrated.
Walter, what is matter with you? Seems like you are tied up in some kind of knot about something. What is matter? What is bothering you?
Mama, there's no point in talking to you.
I'm sorry about your liquor store, son. It just wasn't the thing for us to do. That's what I want to tell you about.
Do you know what this money means to me? Do you know what this money can do for us? Mama, Mama, I want so many things.
Yes, son.
I want so many things that they are driving me kind of crazy. Mama, look at me.
I'm looking at you. You a good-looking boy. You got a job, a nice wife, a fine boy.
A job? Mama, a job? I open and close doors all day long. I drive a man around in his limousine and I say, yes, sir. No, sir. Very good, sir. Shall I take the drive, sir? That ain't no kind of job. That ain't nothing at all. Mama, I don't know if I can make you understand.
Understand what, baby?
Sometimes it's like I can see the future stretched out in front of me, just plain as day. The future, Mama, hanging over there at the edge of my days. A big, looming blank space full of nothing just waiting for me. But it don't have to be. Mama, sometimes when I'm downtown and I pass those cool, quiet looking restaurants where those white boys are sitting back and talking about things and turning deals worth millions of dollars, sometimes I see guys that don't look much older than me.
Son, how come you talk so much about money?
Because it's life, Mama.
Oh, so now it's life. Money is life. Once upon a time, freedom used to be life. Now it's money. I guess the world really has changed.
No, it was always money, Mama. We just didn't know about it. My mama, she didn't think my business, my liquor business, was the right thing for our family. So she didn't give me the money. Instead, she used my father's insurance money to buy us a house in a nice, decent neighborhood so that my son could get a good education and all of us would have a chance at a better life.
Walter, the problem with your mother's decision, it is just not that simple. I am Mr. Linder from the Climber Park Homeowner Association. I heard what you say, but you have got to admit that a man, right or wrong, has the right to have the neighborhood a certain kind of way. And we think it is better for the life of the community when everyone shares a common background. I assure you race prejudice does enter into it. It is matter of the people Climber Park believing, rightly or wrongly, as I say, that for the happiness of all concerned, that our Negro families are happier when they live in their own communities. We are prepared to make your family a very generous offer. Through the collective effort of our people, we will buy the house from you at a financial gain to your family.
I'm Denzel Washington. You probably know me as a movie actor, but I love the theater too. And in 2014, I returned to Broadway to play the character of Walter Younger. You might think I'm a little too old to play Walter. Now, don't laugh. I know what you are thinking. Truth is, I am a lot older, but Walter is a character I was dying to play for a long time because Walter speaks for so many Black men, people I grew up with, people who lived a life of frustration and rejection. Oh, yes, rejection. Man, to listen to Mr. Linder tell Walter and his family that they aren't welcome to move into Clybourne Park because of the color of their skin, well, that is really hard. but it's the way a lot of people think. It's racism, residential racism. It sure hurts to know that people would rather pay you off than have you move into their neighborhood. Things have changed somewhat. There are some mixed neighborhoods today, but racism is still a very serious problem in the United States, and it affects every aspect of a person's life, economically, educationally, socially, and politically. Walter was right when he talked about money. Too often, it is money that segregates people. People who don't have a decent paying job can't afford to live in a decent neighborhood where their children can attend first-rate schools, schools that have the latest textbooks and technology, and schools that have the best teacher. If your children can't get the knowledge and skills necessary to get into college, they aren't going to get in, and they aren't going to get decent paying jobs. That's just the way it is. They are stuck in the same economic situation as their parents.
Children who can't see a way out of their dead-end situation feel hopeless. What's the motivation to work hard and live according to the rules of our society? Where are the rewards for good behavior? Without hope, it should be no surprise that people escape in the bottle or take drugs and often get into trouble because they need money to pay for their bad habits. It's difficult for us, African Americans, to break this cycle of poverty and hopelessness. Even the ones who do break the cycle of poverty today face another kind of racism that is creating tremendous fear and despair throughout the African American community. Ta-Nehisi Coates, writer, educator, and national correspondent for The Atlantic, wrote in his book, Between the World and Me, that Black lives are still in serious jeopardy. His book won the 2015 National Book Award for Nonfiction.
I wrote my book as a letter to my teenage son, who may have felt safe and secure because of the life I was fortunate to provide for him. But after seeing so many innocent young Black men, victims of police brutality, I felt I needed to tell him that each time a police officer engages us, death, injury, and maiming is possible. White supremacy is still alive and well. Today, there is a sprawling prison system, which has turned the warehouse of Black bodies into a jobs program for the white people, with 8% of the world's prisoners being Black. Yes, Black life is cheap, but in America, Black bodies are a natural resource of incomparable value.
My son was incomparable value to me and our family when he was alive. A smart young man, just about to graduate from Howard University, and he is killed. What did he do to deserve this? Nothing. It was racial profiling, racism. There was a trigger-happy police officer who killed my son while he was sitting in his car. When they told me at the hospital that he was gone, it was unlike anything I had felt before. It was physically painful. Whenever a thought of him comes to mind, all I could do was pray and ask for mercy. I thought I was going to lose my mind and go crazy. I felt sick. I felt like dying.
I felt I was dying when my son Walter Scott was killed in April 2015.
And when my son Janoris Williams was killed in November 2015.
My son Trayvon Martin in 2012.
And my son, Michael Brown.
And my son, Jordan Davis.
And my son, John Crawford III.
And my son, Tamir Rice.
And my son, Eric Harris.
And my son, Jonathan Farrell.
And my daughter, Sandra Blunt.
And my daughter, Brianna Taylor.
How long will it take for America to understand that Black Lives Matter.
Matter.
All the days, weeks, months, seasons, and years that I cared for my child, all the dreams of a better life for my children, and one racist act, and it's all over. That's all it takes. One bullet, and it's all over.
With the horrific death of my son, George Floyd, and the protests that followed, perhaps this time will be different. It is got to change.
What happens to a dream deferred? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or maybe it explodes.
Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset, swiftly flow the days. Seedlings turn overnight to sunflowers, blossoming even as we gaze. Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset, swiftly fly the years. One season following another, laden with happiness and tears.
Dreams. My people know a lot about dreams too. Throughout the history of the Jews, we have dreamed of finding a country where we will be treated with the same respect as other citizens of our country and not be targeted because of our religion. Tragically, religion has often been used as an excuse to hate, disgrace, and destroy people who are different. Surely it was hatred of the Jews, anti-Semitism, that caused the Holocaust, the mass slaughter of the European civilians during World War II. Good evening. I'm Elie Wiesel, a survivor of the Holocaust. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this time in history, the Holocaust was the systemic, state-sponsored persecution and murder of approximately 8 million Jewish men, women, and children by the Nazi regime and its collaborators. The Nazis who came to power in Germany in January 1933 believed that Germans were racially superior and that Jews who were inferior were a threat to the German community. German authorities targeted other groups as well, including gypsies, homosexuals, the disabled, Poles, Russians, communists, socialists, and Jehovah's Witnesses.
For a while, I thought my family and I would escape the Holocaust, but we weren't that lucky. I am Otto Frank. You probably never heard of me, but there's a good chance you have heard of my daughter, Anne Frank. We lived in Amsterdam, Holland. To avoid being picked up by the Nazis when they invaded Amsterdam, my family and I went into hiding in a part of my office building that was walled off and hidden by swinging bookcases. For 2 years, we lived in secret with 7 other people. And with the help of my former employees, we had food and other necessities until, well, my daughter's diary tells our story. She was only 13 when she began writing. Through her diary, we can see what life was like for a girl growing up under the most unimaginable circumstances. How wise and full of hope she was, especially when she was with her friend Peter, who didn't share her optimism. She tried very hard to help him, but...
Look, Peter, the sky. What a lovely, lovely day. Aren't the clouds beautiful? You know what I do when it seems if I can't stand being cooped up for one more minute? I think myself out. I think myself on a walk in the park where I used to go with Pim, where the jonquils and the crocuses and the violets grow down the slopes. You know the most wonderful part about thinking yourself out? You can have it any way you like. You can have roses and violets and chrysanthemums all blooming at the same time. It's funny, I used to take it all for granted, and now I've gone crazy about everything to do with nature. Haven't you?
I've just gone crazy. I think if something doesn't happen soon, if we don't get out of here, I constant, much more of it.
I wish you had religion, Peter.
No thanks, not me.
Oh, I don't mean that you have to be Orthodox or believe in heaven and hell and purgatory and things. I just mean some religion. Doesn't matter what, just to believe in something. When I think of all that's out there, trees and flowers and seagulls, when I think of the dearness of you, Peter, and the goodness of the people we know, Mr. Crawler, Meep, Dirk, the vegetable man, all risking their lives for us every day. When I think of these good things, I'm not afraid anymore. I find
You
myself
aren't
and
making
God.
sense.
We're not the only people that's had to suffer. They've always been people that have had to sometimes race, sometimes another, and yet I just
That
don't
doesn't
understand.
make me feel any better.
I know it's terrible trying to have any faith when people are doing such horrible, but you know what I sometimes think? I think the world may be going through a phase, the way I was with Mother. It'll pass, maybe not for hundreds of years, but someday I still believe, in spite of everything, that people are really good at heart.
I want to see something now, not from 1,000 years from now.
But Peter, if you only look at it as part of a great pattern, that we're just a little minute in this life. Listen to us, going at it like a couple of stupid grown-ups. Look at the sky now. Isn't it lovely? Someday when we're outside again, I'm going to...
Open up! Open up in there!
Peter, you go ahead. I'll be with you in a minute. Oh, dear diary, I must get my diary. No, no, dear diary, I can't take you with me. I have to leave you here. I'll leave it under a chair, and I pray that our dear neighbor will find you and keep you safe from me.
We were betrayed. Our secret hiding place was discovered. We were arrested and sent to concentration camps. My dear daughters, Anne and her sister, and my wife all died in the concentration camp in 1945. I was lucky. I was freed by the Russians in 1945. Thankfully, our kind neighbor did find Anne's diary and kept it safe. You can't imagine how I felt when our neighbor placed it in my hands. It was all that I had left of my daughter, my family. You may know our story as The Diary of Anne Frank, which was published in 1947. I've been told it's the most well-known personal memoir of the Holocaust.
It's not so hard to understand the enduring appeal of Anne's diary. Anne is somebody with whom all young people can identify. Many of her teenage dreams, aspirations, and worries are similar to others her age, regardless of religion or nationality. So, what terrible thing did she do to deserve her death? Nothing. And that is the point. If this sweet, idealistic young woman could become a victim of prejudice for no reason other than her religion, is anybody safe? By the end of World War II, the toll had risen to 6 million Jews, which included 1.5 million children who perished at the hands of the Nazis. When the killing ended, those who survived were released from the concentration camp and came out of hiding. I was one of those people. Here is my story. When the German soldiers occupied my hometown in Romania in March 1944, they forced us to wear yellow stars. The Nazis closed out Jewish stores, raided our house, and forced us into 2 ghettos. In early June, my family and I were among the last Jews to be loaded into a cattle car with 80 people in one car. After 4 days, the train stopped at Auschwitz. I was 15. My father and I were sent to be slave laborers. My mother and younger sister were taken to the gas chambers. My father and I survived first Auschwitz and then the Buna labor camp for 8 months, enduring beatings, hunger, other torture, and roll calls, and witnessed hangings. Like other inmates, I was stripped of my identity and became known only by my number, A7713. For years, I couldn't talk or write about my experiences, but eventually I was persuaded to break my silence and write about what I endured as an inmate in the Holocaust. I remember writing, "Never shall I forget that night, the first night in camp, which has turned my life into one long night. 7 times cursed, 7 times sealed. Never shall I forget that smoke.
Never shall I forget
The little faces of the children whose bodies I saw turned into the wreaths of smoke beneath a silent blue sky.
Never shall I forget
Those flames which consume my faith forever.
Never shall I forget
That nocturnal silence which deprived me for all eternity of the desire to live.
Never shall I forget
Those moments which murdered my God and my soul and turned my dreams to dust.
Never shall I forget
These things, even if I am condemned to live as long as God himself, never.
Elie Wiesel, a Nobel Peace Prize winner and professor, could have easily remained angry at the world and spent his life on acts of revenge. Instead, he used his personal experience of the Holocaust and his talents as an author, teacher, and storyteller to work on behalf of oppressed people and defend human rights and peace throughout the world. I have the greatest respect for this courageous man and his mission. I'm Laura Z. Hobson, and I also wrote about the Nazis, but I am known for my book, which later became a movie called Gentleman's Agreement. As a journalist, it occurred to me that while many people know about the atrocities that took place in Europe during World War II, not many people, especially young people, knew about the anti-Semitism that existed in America. So in Gentleman's Agreement, my leading character is a Christian who, as a journalist, has been assigned a series of articles about anti-Semitism.
I'm Philip Green, journalist, and it occurred to me that the best way for me to do my research and find out if anti-Semitism was really a problem in the United States was to pretend to be a Jew. What did I learn from this experience? I learned that anti-Semitism was very real and very active, even in places like New York City and in the affluent community of Darien, Connecticut. Acting as a Jew, I discovered how it feels to be a victim of religious intolerance. When I used the Jewish name I chose for myself to register at a hotel, the hotel suddenly ran out of rooms. When I tried to put my Jewish name on my mailbox, the mailman suggested that I omit my last name altogether. When my son Tommy was playing with other children, they told him that no dirty Jew could play with them. Did those children even know what a Jew was? As it turned out, even the people closest to me, including my fiancée, Kathy, disappointed me. To be quite honest, I don't think she was actually anti-Semitic. I think she, like a lot of people, just didn't know what to do when she was in a social situation and friends were saying things that were clearly anti-Semitic. But she wanted to learn. When the two of us argued over my research project, she called on Dave Goldman, a Jewish friend of mine, to get some advice.
Dave, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer me honestly.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Do you think I'm anti-Semitic?
No, Kathy, I don't.
Phil does.
Does he?
You know I'm not anti-Semitic. You're a Jew and you know it. Why can't I make it clear to everybody but Phil? Did you know I was the one who suggested the series he's doing on anti-Semitism?
No, I didn't.
I hate this thing as much as he does. Why can't he see it? At a dinner at the country club, an old friend Robert Jenkins told a horrible joke. I was sick with shame.
What kind of a joke? I can take curse words.
Oh, all right. The joke was about a Jewish businessman, and Robert tried to get lost with words about Jews that weren't nice. They were insulting. I despised him and everybody else.
What did you do when Robert told the joke?
What do you mean?
I mean, what did you say when he was finished?
I wanted to yell at Robert. I wanted to leave. I wanted to say to everyone, why are you telling such a terrible story? Why are you making fun of Jews? And why is everybody laughing at this stupid joke? This is not right.
What did you do?
I just sat there. I felt ashamed. We all just sat there. I felt sick.
I wonder if you feel so sick now, Kathy. If you had said something. There's a funny kind of pleasure that comes from getting back, telling people who think they are so wonderful that their words are hurtful, inappropriate, and their behavior makes them look bad.
I understand what you're saying, but it's so hard with friends, people you've known for years.
Lots of things are hard, Kathy, but you really have to believe that prejudice is wrong. You just can't sit there. Behind that joke, there's lots of hate and tolerance for people who are different.
And if you don't stop with that joke, where do you stop? Is that what you mean?
That's right. If you don't say stop, I don't want to hear such hateful things. Who will speak up? It has to start with you, with me, with each of us. It takes courage. But if we don't stand up for others, who will stand up for us?
Where does prejudice come from? You've got to be taught to hate and fear. You've got to be taught from year to year. It's got to be drummed in your dear little ear. You've got to be carefully taught.
I was taught so well that being gay was something to be ashamed of, that I lived with shame for a very long time. Yes, I was taught so well that I experienced enormous fear every time I was interviewed. I am Ellen DeGeneres, and as a comedian and television personality, I was told that I would lose a lot, perhaps my career, if I came out and announced that I am gay. And for a long time, I just couldn't do it. But when I got to a point that was more important to be proud of who I am than to maintain my fame, I was willing to risk losing everything. I'm so grateful I felt the courage to tell the truth. As a result, I found my real love. And I ask you, what is more important than that? I never planned to become an activist, but when I learned about the suicide rate of young gay teens who couldn't live with their shame and weren't rewarded with coming out as I have been, I realized I had no choice. I became an activist too.
When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. So, darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. stand by me.
I am Harvey Milk. I was an activist too. In fact, I was one of the first to speak out for the LGBTQ community. Unfortunately, I had a short career in politics, but I believe I made a difference in San Francisco as one of the first openly LGBTQ officials to be elected in the United States. I'm particularly proud that in 1978, I was able to help defeat Proposition 6, a proposal to fire and bar gay teachers from jobs in California's public schools. I also encourage a lot of people to come out and fight for their rights, the rights that are spelled out in the Declaration of Independence, the inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when we defeated Proposition 6, I told everybody this. Tonight, it's become clear to everyone out there that they do know one of us. And now that they do, they can see that we are not sick. They can feel that we are not wrong. And they know that there should be a place for us in this great country, in this world. A message of hope has been sent to all those young people, to all of those who have been afraid by this wave of hate, to all of those who have lost their homes, lost their hometowns. Tonight, we are clear that there's a place for us. My brothers and sisters, we can come home again.
Sadly, Harvey Milk's celebration was short lived because the next day he was assassinated by a political foe. Politics isn't what murdered my son, Matthew Sherpritt, a gay University of Wyoming student in Laramie. He was a victim of ignorance, brainwashing, hate, and prejudice when he was kidnapped, severely beaten, and left to die, tied to a fence on the outskirts of Laramie on the night of October 6, 1998. My son Matthew didn't look like a winner. He was small for his age, only 5'2". He was uncoordinated, and he had worn braces on his teeth since he was 13. However, in his all too brief life, he proved to be a winner. My son, a gentle, caring soul, fought so hard to live, but after 6 days of unbearable pain, he lost his battle. On October 12, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero died quietly, surrounded by family and friends, with his mother and brother holding his hand. All that I have left now are the memories.
I'm a member of the Human Rights Campaign, an organization that is working for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender equal rights.
Every time I hear Mr. Shepherd speak about his son and his horrific death, I cry. Who is not touched by this amazing father? As I take a deep breath and dry my eyes, I can't help but think about the incredible strength, courage, and wisdom of Matthew's dad. Not all parents are as strong and supportive. It is true that change can be very difficult, especially for people of a generation who are used to living with some form of prejudice. Whether it is right or wrong, it took a lot of time for people who were used to segregation to recognize its immorality and come to appreciate the justice and value of integration. And people who have never known a person who is openly gay are not always prepared when their friends, colleagues, or children come out of the closet. You will hear two stories of men who came out and how their parents handled it. The first comes from StoryCorps, a program on National Public Radio.
I am Nathan Hoskins. When I was in sixth grade, I met a good friend, and he wasn't interested in girls. One day he said, I have a Valentine's Day card for you. I asked him for it, and he said it was so special that he mailed it. He meant well, but he didn't know he'd done a very terrible thing because at my house, Only one person got the mail, and that was my mother. On the way home, I was trying to plan how I would get that letter, but when I got off the bus, Mom had already checked the mail. My mom came out and met me on the front steps. She had that envelope, and I could tell what it was because it had little hearts on it. And, it was all cute and everything. And she'd asked me.
Did you read it?
And I said no. And she made me read it. And I did everything I could to lie and convince my mother that I did not solicit that. And she took me into the house and pulled her shotgun out of the closet. She loaded it in front of me and put it in my hands and told me to hold on to it. She led me outside and she put me in the back of the car and she drove me out into the country. Now, when I say country, it's no man's land. She stopped on the side of the road and I've been holding the shotgun in my hands the entire time. And she led me out into the woods and she stood me up against a tree. She took the shotgun out of my hands and she put it to my head.
This is the tree that I would take my son to and blow his head off if he ever decided to be a faggot.
And at that moment, I knew I had to do whatever it took to not be gay. And I tried very hard, and I was a great liar for many years. Probably 2 years ago, I asked her about that. I said, "Mom, remember this?" And she would laugh. I said, "Mom, I just want to hear one time that what you did was wrong." But she couldn't say it. When I asked her if she acknowledged that it happened, she said,
Yes. Oh, yes.
I guess she really did think that she was doing the right thing then. I was always trying very hard to please others as a child, but as an adult, I look back and I say, I am who I'm supposed to be. There was never another alternative.
Fortunately, mine is a different story from Nathan's. I'm Frank Bruni, New York Times journalist, and I'd like to share my father's journey.
For a long time, my father's way of coping was to walk quietly from the room. He doesn't remember this. I do. I can still see it. I can still feel the pinch in my chest when the word gay came up. Perhaps in reference to some event in the news, or perhaps in reference to me. And he'd wordlessly take his leave of whatever conversation my mother and my siblings and I were having. He'd drift away, not in disgust, but in discomfort. Not in a huff, but in a whisper. I saw a lot of his back and I was grateful. Discomfort beat rejection. So long as he wasn't pushing me away, I didn't need him to pull me in as, for a heart to heart. This wasn't his style anyway. In 1981, when I was 17 years old, and I told my mother that I was gay, she begged me not to tell my dad, thinking it was too risky. But when I did tell him a few years later, he treated me the same as before, but never brought up the subject. One day, he shared some of what he was thinking.
It was just so unusual to me. I heard it said that gay people were somehow stunted, maybe even ill. But that makes no sense because I'm confident that you are neither stunted nor ill. I heard it said that particular upbringings turn children gay. I thought about this a lot and I came to the conclusion that it has to be in your genes, in you, because I can't think how the environment for you was any different than it was for your two brothers. But I worried that you would be in for a more difficult and less complete life than your brothers and sisters were.
Why didn't you ever broach these concerns with me?
I felt it would have been an insult. You are obviously smart enough to have assessed the terrain and figured out for yourself how you were going to navigate it.
When I broke up with the man I'd seen for 6 years and about whom my father was so effusive, he must have told me a bunch of times how sorry he was about that. It was a message that he was rooting for my happiness, no matter how that happiness came to me. What he struggled most with was his concern about what others would think of me, about him, and our family. But despite his concerns, he approved of my writing about the discrimination of gays.
There's prejudice out there, and it's good to fight that. Visibility and openness are obviously integral to that battle. I'm convinced that people who don't accept gays just don't really know any of them.
I'm Lynn Conway. I'm an award-winning computer systems designer and professor. University students around the world use my innovative textbooks. But early in my career, I worked for IBM as a male. When I explained to them that I had struggled incessantly since birth with my identity and was undergoing a sex reassignment, I was fired. I had to start all over again at the beginning as a simple contract programmer, but without a past. This time, I could do it happily as a woman I was meant to be. I did have to keep my past to myself for 31 years because, you see, as good as I was in my profession, I knew transgender people who were raped, fired, beaten, ostracized from families, and subject to about every kind of discriminations. Though I can tell my story now, and there is more acceptance in some places, you still risk your job, even your life, when the truth comes out. I hope to see the day when gender transition is no longer viewed as a sad, shameful, and tragic event, but instead as a wonderful life-giving miracle for those so unfortunate to have been misgendered at birth.
You are one of the lucky ones who has never experienced prejudice. Perhaps it is hard to understand what it's like for people who are forced to live with acts of prejudice. Perhaps a little empathy would help. We're your friends, your classmates, your relatives, your doctors, your teachers. And I ask you to put yourself in our shoes for a minute. Think of yourself as gay. Yes, you were born this way. Whether you accept this reality or not, the research can prove it. You come to realize that something is different about you, but you don't always know what it is or why it is before a friend, family member, acquaintance, or stranger teases or bullies you and makes you feel inadequate.
And this feeling doesn't go away. So you live a secret life throughout your youth, teenage years, perhaps even adulthood, and pretend to be somebody else your entire life. The very brave people who come out of the closet and openly share their sexual orientation take a chance. The emotional, physical, and financial cost could be significant. Gay people often experience humiliation, name calling, bullying, harassment, and job loss.
Can you imagine how it feels to be treated so cruelly? It is especially hard to believe that many people of faith, whose mission it is to show compassion for all of God's creatures, openly endorse homophobia and discrimination of people who are gay. We can only hope that one day all people of faith will remember the golden rule: love thy neighbor as thy love thyself, and do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Today we bow our heads, embarrassed over our treatment of Native Americans, African Americans, women, and other minorities. Soon, we will be doing the same when we recall the inexcusable treatment that continues to plague the LGBTQ community.
And we are very sad and sorry to say that over the past few years, inexcusable treatment has now been extended to migrants in America. During the past few years, certain groups in particular are singled out for hurtful comments and blatant acts of discrimination. When the President of the United States used the most egregious form of stereotyping and characterized the Mexican who have come to the United States as drug dealers, rapists, criminals, and freeloaders, he set a tragic example. He gave people a license to denigrate not only Mexican, but all Latinos. As a Mexican, I can tell you firsthand, there is noticeable rise in hate crimes. I personally have been told countless times, go home. You don't belong here.
Since the horrific tragedy that occurred on 9/11, we Muslims have been demonized and told to go home. This president has taken fear of terrorists, fear of an extreme militant group, to condemn all of us, even ban Muslims from several different countries from entering the United States. We feel unwelcome, even threatened. People have turned their backs on us when we've entered a room. Look at us as though we were criminals. We've been told how we should dress and what we should wear in order to look like Americans. When did America have a dress code?
If there is a dress code, I didn't hear about it either. It isn't comfortable for many of us with Asian backgrounds to express our feelings in public. But the situation today is too dire for us to maintain our silence anymore. When we quietly go to school, run a business, avoid hurting anybody, we, too, are told to go home. For most of us, this is our home. We've come here for economic opportunity, a quality education, freedom of speech, a dream of a better life, just like other ethnic and religious groups.
There is a virus that originated in China, but nobody here is responsible. And who was the first to die from it? The Chinese. Yet we're treated as though we are to blame. As a result, we're shoved and verbally abused. Our restaurants are broken into. At night, when sleep eludes me, I ask myself, why? Why are these things happening to us? Did the woman who called me names have a bad experience with someone who looked like me? Isn't this the country that is supposed to be the model of inclusiveness?
You've got to be taught to hate and fear. You've got to be taught from year to year. It's got to be drummed in your dear little ear. You've got to be carefully taught.
Yes, it is true that it can start with parents and teachers telling children whom to disparage, whom to hate. But let's be honest, it's not just brainwashing. When things are bad, when we feel despair, hopeless, when our dreams are deferred, perhaps we explode with blinding envy. When we can't deal with our own misfortunes or failures, whether they're self imposed or not, a scapegoat is very attractive. So it was for the Nazis in Germany blaming the country's economic woes on the Jews. Good citizens who were scared and angry were willing to turn a blind eye to the hideous behavior of a government that has lost its moral compass and reinforced negative stereotypes and blatant lies. These citizens sold their souls to the evil because there's a comfort in numbers, comfort in belonging, even if membership for a group that is evil and sustained by lies. We all need to be aware of the harm of teaching hate and scapegoating. Victims of these harmful behaviors teach us about the importance of
rejecting such destructive behavior and standing up for what is right. It is critical now more than ever to recognize prejudice for what it is, how it operates, and forcefully reject it. There are simply no credible reasons to justify demeaning or hurting, emotionally or physically, other people who haven't intentionally set out to hurt us. Unfortunately, there are still too many people who feel they have the right to control, change, or eliminate people who don't fit their vision, their standards, their people. We are here to say that nobody should be ashamed of his or her race, religion, ethnicity, or sexual orientation, and nobody has the right to reject, hurt, or kill another human being because of his or her differences.
I'm Jerry Harriman, a composer and lyricist, and I put our message to the musical in the musical play La Cage aux Folles. The song tells us with the great confidence and conviction what the gay community wants. In fact, what everybody wants. The right, the absolute right to be what I am. No apologies needed. Here is the song abridged. I am what I am.
I am my own special creation.
So come take a look.
Give me the hook or the ovation.
It's my word that I want to take a little pride in.
my world and it's not a place I have to hide in.
Life's not worth a damn till you can say,
Hey world, I am what I am.
I am what I am.
I don't want praise. I don't want pity.
I bang my own drum.
Some think it's noise. I think it's pretty. And so, what if I love each feather and each spangle?
Why not try to see things from a different angle?
Your life is a sham till you can shout out loud.
I am what I am. I am what I am.
And what I am needs no excuses.
I deal my own deck.
Sometimes an ace, sometimes the deuces.
there's one life and there's no return or deposit.
One life, so it is time to open up your closet.
Life's not worth a damn till you can say,
I am what I am.
I
I
am
am
what I
Am what
am.
I
What
am.
I
I
am.
am.
We are the voices of diversity. We are different in many ways, but we all want the same things: your respect, your compassion, and your help.
It takes a lot of people to build a more harmonious and accepting world that we can all be proud to inhabit.
But with your help, we believe it's possible.
It's never too late to do something right.
We hope that from this moment on, you will add your voice to our message and be a builder of a better human race too.
In fact, you are welcome right now to stand up, add your voice, and tell of your story. You are also welcome to email your stories so that is our next reader Twitter. With your permission, your voice will be heard.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love.
It's the only thing that there's just too little of.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love.
No, not just for some, but for everyone.
love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love.
No, not just for some, but for everyone.
Lord, we don't need another mountain. There are mountains and hillsides enough to climb.
There are oceans and rivers
enough to cross, enough to last
Till the end of time. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love.
No, not just for some, but for everyone.
Lord, we don't need another meadow.
There are cornfields and wheat fields enough to grow.
There are sunbeams and moonbeams enough to shine.
Oh, listen, Lord,
If you wanna know,
if you wanna know.
what the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love.
No, not just for some,
But for
what the world needs now is love, sweet love. What